Well, there are different projects that are going on throughout the world, but I can make reference to the one that's in Jamaica, although again it's English-speaking Creole. It's the Jamaica Bilingual Education Project. And what they realize is the students already come with Creole. And when we try to erase that aspect of the students' lives, they actually are unable to even communicate in Standard English. Standard English becomes the foreign language. So it would be similar in the French islands, although our project is not going on. When you recognize the heart language, as it were, of any child, that child is going to be able to make a better transition as opposed to complete erasing and then trying to put a new language in, because you're working from what is known to the unknown. So I think many persons use the principle of English as a second language, and then you move students from Creole into the standard that you want. And there is no point in actually pitting one against the other. It's always good to let them know they are bilingual in that regard, and as you give value to the Creole language that they already speak at home, then they are able to appreciate English. What has been happening, or French, what has been happening is that students would reject the European language that is the official language of the territory, because they're being constantly told, you talk too bad, speak properly. So they don't really know what is proper speaking, what is proper language, because that education has not been done to help them to move from the known to the unknown, and they're not using Creole. So there is great benefit in making that Creole language become valuable to the child. So language as a means of communication is seen as valuable, and they are simply adding another language to what they already know.
I want to say also that it could be a good idea, but of course you have to have the necessary teaching resources. That's important. Training is important, because you may have, you want to promote the vernacular within the classroom setting, but then you also have to have a good syllabus put in place, people who are able to teach, because that's important. And also, whether this may not be easy because also of how the community react towards the language already. Because there was I think in the 80s, there was one school in Martinique, they had it was a pilot project, and that didn't go very well because you had attitudinal factors, involved. So once the parents did not agree, well, it could not go further. But I think it will take time if it ever happen, but you have to have the necessary resources for it to happen in a good way.
Because considering official language of St. Lucia is English, but how beneficial is Creole in the classroom? Because I know it must have some benefit. It must.
There are children who go to school, right? And when they walk into the school, into the classroom, they know absolutely no English. Absolutely no English. Right? Even now, it's less the case now, but even now, you will find some of those situations. How do you make that child literate? Do you ignore the language that the child knows and introduce a totally new language to the child at 5 years old? Or do you use the language the child knows in order to make him literate, in order to make him understand English, in order to make him understand Creole, and so on? So the language has its role in terms of literacy. So that child who comes in, I'll give you an example of what I'm talking about. The word to. That child walks in the classroom, and the teacher is talking about the word to. As you know, in English, we have to T-O, to T-O-O, and the difference between those two is extremely difficult to conceptualize, even to an English speaker, right? You have the word to, T-W-O, yeah? Okay. So you have T-O, T-O-O, T-W-O, and you're trying to explain that to the child. But guess what? The child knows two as well. But the two that the child knows is not T-O, and not T-O-O, and not T-W-O. The two the child knows is T-O-U, which is the Creole word for whole. So how can you make that, how can you truly get to that child if you as the teacher don't have that basic understanding of the language to be able to reach out to the child, to be able to reach the child, and to be able to allow the child to reach you, then if you don't have that basic understanding of the language.
So as Chief Inspector of Schools for Hackney, I was brought into discussions about the national curriculum in English. And under that remit, we were also having discussions about mixed languages, Creole language speakers, etc., and how they would be included in the curriculum. I came away from the discussion, I and other people, on National Curriculum English, which said two things. Number one, any Creole of French vocabulary was not included in the package of language acquisition under the title of English. The second thing I came away with, which was more brutal, was that all discussions about Creoles, mixed languages, etc., would run side by side with discussions with people with special educational needs and their access to the curriculum. So I was left with no illusions about what the line was going to be taken on the development of National Curriculum English. However, as I've said, the Greek groups, the Turkish groups have kept on teaching their language and culture, whether or not they're getting support from the system or not. However, we have a difficulty even arriving at teaching African Caribbean history among ourselves, let alone the question of language and identity. So I think there is a central psychological problem with us, wherever I've found us, whether it's Africa, the Caribbean, or elsewhere. And until we address this at a governmental level, which would take some doing, because the governments themselves would have to accept some of what I'm saying, and all the instances that I've given you point to the fact that they're not, or in their terms they have another emphasis. WISS was a group in Waltham Forest, and their brief was how to help the development of Caribbean pupils in the schools in Walthamstow. And they were working on some good assumptions, which was that the Creoles, whether Jamaican, St. Lucian or otherwise, were dominantly of a different grammatical structure, and so they were promoting teaching English more as a second language. However, they ran into the bind that some of the parents, just as I told you I had a problem in thinking that French was my Creole, some of the parents had the problem that they thought the Jamaican Creole was actually English. And so for them, the notion that you were going to teach it as a second language was not popular. The second kind of problem would be from the general community at the time. They'd be saying, well, why are you spending money on African Caribbean pupils? They'd accepted that it's okay to spend it on Spaniards who need more language development, Asians, etc. But when you came to African Caribbeans, for them, if you like, the jump from the history of slavery, from my perspective, was one that they did not make mentally. So they could understand other Caucasians, Asians, people from Europe, coming here with a legitimate language and culture, and then needing help, and they as Caucasians would also help them. But they're slaves, right? So if you think of Prospero and Caliban, Prospero only has an image of Caliban as a subservient. Suddenly, Caliban wants to talk in the language of the spheres. The isle is full of noises, full of sweet sounds that bring delight but hurt not. So that kind of challenge of saying, hey, the person needs help like the other Caucasians, in order to get into the system, to be on, let's say, a more equal footing with me, was one which some people in authority did not wish to make.
As a result of World War II, post-World War II, there was a lot of Caribbean migration to the UK, from the late 40s to the early 70s. A lot of people know that these people were invited, as much as it's denied. Some people say they weren't invited, to come and help rebuild the country. Many of the adults went first in many migration patterns, as we know, and then the children followed later. Unfortunately, many of these children were treated unfairly in the UK education system, for the primary reasons that they spoke a Caribbean Standard English, which was different to the British Standard English. They used Caribbean Creole terms or vernacular, or they spoke a Caribbean Creole. And this led to the creation of, or pushing children into, schools known as educationally subnormal. And as you've seen by Steve McQueen's Small Act series, the episode named Education, or the Subnormal documentary on BBC, that these children weren't particularly treated fair at all.
Child. But these tests were clearly made up not to test children from different cultures. It meant that one was comparing, I would say, apples with lemons.
Using both workbooks and props like these little white dolls, children were asked to fulfill tasks that supposedly didn't require special knowledge. This question, for example, asks the child to fill in details on a deliberately incomplete drawing of a person, adding the missing leg, arm, or eye. Other parts of the test, however, relied on more culturally specific knowledge, favouring children who had grown up here.
When I used tests with children, one found that children didn't understand the words that were asked of them. For example, when children were asked, what's a tap? They couldn't describe it, they couldn't define it. I felt he must be able to say this, to say what this is. It's something that is used in the West Indies. It must have a name.
In fact, there was no reason why West Indian children should have known what the word tap means, because in parts of the Caribbean, a tap was known as a pipe.
Fortunately, there was a tap in the very room in which I was testing, and I walked across the room and I said, well, what is this? And the child said, a pipe. They knew what a pipe was, which was the same concept. That meant that on tests, they were made to feel inferior when they realized that many of the items that were asked of them, they could not clearly define.
This wiped out a lot of Caribbean children out of the education system, and unfortunately that caused horrendous issues for many people. The only happy thing you could say about that some didn't suffer and went back to do adult education. But knowing that, I can understand why some parents didn't want to teach Creole languages. So that's just something for some people to understand why they might not have known or spoke a Creole language because of them growing up in the UK or having a parent that spent significant time in the UK, and they were probably traumatized by the situation itself. Slightly after post-World War II migration from the Caribbean to the UK, the same started to occur in France, with Martinicans, Guadeloupeans, French Guyanese people, and people from the island of La Réunion in the Indian Ocean migrating to France. And unfortunately, Caribbean students experienced the same treatment in France as they were in the UK. According to the book La langue créole faut juguler by Danny Bebe-Gisler, it showed that the French educational system placed immigrant children from the Caribbean in remedial classes or educationally subnormal classes. Bebe-Gisler found that Caribbean children were discriminated against based on how they spoke French or if they spoke a Creole language. Many Caribbean children were removed from lessons and put into special classes. From this point onwards, they did not receive the same level of education that they were previously used to. Bebe-Gisler's research showed that the removal of children from mainstream education caused them to feel inferior and impacted their ability to get jobs after leaving school, as a result of not being able to take exams because they were removed from mainstream education.
In terms of the 70s and the 60s, or maybe even the 80s as well, a lot of children from Caribbean background, West Indian background, were pushed into like special educational needs
Yes.
and whatnot. Do you have any kind of sympathy for why they possibly would have taught the Creole languages?
I didn't get the last bit.
Okay,
Do
so,
I have any sympathy?
Well, not sympathy. Do you give them any leniency in that way?
Yes, partially, because I spent 33 years of my life supporting and developing black supplementary schools. And in the black supplementary schools, what we emphasized was English, mathematics, African and Caribbean history, because what we were facing was, are the children going to come out with a basic education?
Mm-hmm.
And the approach towards identity that we had was more located in history of the Caribbean and Africa than it was on languages. Mm-hmm. Now in Britain, my kind of experience was equally difficult. At one stage we had the idea of people validating their community languages. So when I was Inspector for Languages for the whole of Haringey, we carried out policies for supporting mother tongue, Greek, Turkish, Hindi, etc. But we ran into problems when it came to the Caribbean. Caribbean groups were not interested in bidding for money, which was available, around the development of Creole. The one Creole group that I supported financially when I was through the ILEA was a group teaching Seychelles Creole. But not one single Caribbean group would be standing up and say, I want some of the money which you're giving to Greeks and Turks to support their mother tongue, to support Creole. So what I'm saying to you, again, the problem or part of the problem is not them, it is us and what we see as valuable in the universe. So everybody would agree that English is a dominant language, you need to learn it. but all the other groups also agree that Turkish, whatever their language is, also has a value and currency, and they will preserve that as well.
So is
But we are the only group on the planet Earth, both in Africa and the Caribbean, whose major agenda is to get rid of all traces of their culture. And every direction you look in, everywhere you go, this is where we are. The great writer Frantz Fanon put it this way. He said, at the risk of upsetting some of my black brothers and sisters, I must say to you that the black man has only one fate, and it is white. And at the time I read it, I was angry and I disagreed. But once I've gained a deeper understanding across my travels to China, India, Caribbean, South Africa, West Africa, America, the Caribbean, Black British, I have to conclude the man had a point. So let's take what I encountered when I was languages inspector for Haringey. The Cypriot government would be sending free teachers who the local authority wouldn't pay, to teach Cypriot Greek to children of Greek origin. Yeah? So that means they value their language and culture. They've guaranteed that those who want to learn their language and culture have got access to a teacher, and it's done. There's nothing to discuss. Yeah? For the Turks, who did not have that kind of financial backing, some of generally the better off Turks supported the supplementary schools. And in these supplementary schools, they taught Turkish. So it's not a big deal in itself. The problem is us.
But why do you think the GCSE didn't come to fruition? Because there was a plan for a GCSE, wasn't there?
Well, the Pakistanis got it for Urdu and the Bangladeshis got it for Bangla. But I think it was two things. One, if you look at the numbers, when you look at the numbers of Urdu kids, Urdu speaking kids, you look at the number of Bangladeshi speaking kids across the country. When you look at the number of potential patois speaking kids, it's it's a drop in the ocean, you know. And I think it was a combination of, I would think it was a combination of lack of numbers from you know, the powers that be, and it didn't get pushed because there wasn't the mass of people to push. No, there's power in numbers, you know what I mean?
About, do you think there should have been an opportunity to teach the language in UK schools? What do you think of that?
Well, again, I've got mixed feelings. Having been a teacher and being in schools regularly, I know problems is the wrong word, but there's a heavy schedule in schools. Will there be time? Will there be the resources to be able to teach? And would you be teaching just children of that ethnic background or everyone? But I think that should be taken and has been taken over by Saturday schools. So that's a place people interested in that culture would send their children along. I was very much involved in Saturday schools, and I linked the storytelling part of it. So it is not just the language on its own, but the language and the stories and the proverbs and the riddles and all the things that make Creole or a part of the oral tradition. So Saturday school is a very good place, and you've got the children from those backgrounds coming with that desire, and the parents as well. So I would say it's probably not the best place in school. There's so much going on already, and so much lacking in other areas. So I think we need to take responsibility for this and do it in all Saturday schools or clubs or whatever it is.
Do you think there should be classes for younger generations?
Yes.
I think there should definitely be classes, and or even, you know, expanding. I mean, when you think of Black History Month, 1 month, and how much is done, not a lot. I think it could be something that is brought in the curriculum.
My question is, would there be enough people to fill up that class?
Yeah.
Very good point.
Do you know what?
So it would have to be an after. It'd have to be an after class thing.
And if there was a class, it would have to be like a central location where everyone could get to. Because I feel like if we are here, we're dispersed, and I don't know if you could, let's say, situate it in Hertfordshire and get a lot of Dominicans and St. Lucians to come.
It'd have to be
come
central.
now.
That would need such a drive, such a promotion, and I guess it could start with the associations, as Sylvia has been doing, but I think it needs to be really supported, perhaps, and expanded.
I started the first class in 2010, and we held them in Hackney and Acton. So I don't know if you know about this East-West divide thing going on. Sometimes when there are events, people who live in Hackney, they think, oh, it's too far to come all the way down west. People who live in the west, oh, all the way in Hackney, this kind of thing. So it was decided we'd have some in Hackney and some in Acton. So this is what we did. And it wasn't really a course at the time. It was just more like drop-in classes. We didn't have the same people come in every week. Sometimes somebody would start, then you wouldn't see them for a few weeks and so on. So you could say it was just testing the ground, so to speak. So that's how it started from. It was really informal drop-in sessions. We spoke about different things every week. And I included the writing systems to make them aware. Because, you know, some people don't know you can actually write Creole. So included that. So that's how it started.
Yeah. Why did you start it?
Well, I joined an association called DONA, which you know about, Dominica Overseas Nationals Association. And that was one of the projects I asked to be included when, you know, the committee met and they asked, is there any projects you would like to see included for us to consider? So I added Creole to that list because I was coming across a lot of people, both Londoners and Dominicans, who were saying they couldn't speak Creole. So I thought, well, this is the Dominican Association. It would be good to get something going. So that was put forward as something that we could look into. But it was kind of on the back burner for a while. And you know, the issue was, oh, who would we get to teach it? You know, we have to make some inquiries. So after a while, I just said, look, I can do this, you know. So I put myself forward to do it. I mean, I knew I could do it. So I put myself forward to do it. But at the time, when I put it forward, I didn't really envisage that I was going to be the teacher of it. But this would probably still be on the back burner, you know. I think we have a lot of success with the course. People are quite studious and try to attend as many as they can. Don't they, Isaac? Sorry.
It's true.
Okay, no, yeah. So he's one of the ones that's done quite well, even though we didn't see him every time.
Oh, yeah.
So I think people made more of a commitment because they knew it was 13 weeks. They had already paid up front and they were coming as much as they can. There was a few little problems with some people because, you know, people have busy lives. They don't have time to do the work. One person, because what I do in week 1, I give everyone an alphabet CD so they can hear how the sounds are pronounced. We reached about week 3 and the person still hadn't listened because she didn't have time. She said she was working around the clock. So little things like that. People don't have time to do the work and catch up. If all they do is turn up at the class and that's it, nothing else till next week, it's not going to work very well for them. They have to put in some work. So that's a little issue that we have at times. But on the whole, I'd say they're going well.
Do you think those that are born here should learn the language and should it be taught in school here?
I think both ways are valuable because some parents, when they're here to integrate themselves or for other reasons, they don't speak Creole. So it's cool to learn it at school because it's part as well of the French diversity. The other thing is that there is not so many people that speak Creole in France except Caribbean people, and we don't have the chance if we don't have in our environment a lot of people that speak Creole. We don't have the chance to speak it, to practice it a lot, and it can be lost very, very fast. So.
Cette classe de terminale est un peu l'exception. Au menu aujourd'hui, cours d'étymologie créole.
Et nous qu'à suivre, notre monde qu'à prendre la poursuite. C'est l'INI.
21 élèves, 2 heures de langue régionale par semaine, un enseignement choisi par cette jeune femme
Métini, donc ou Kali.
Pour mieux communiquer avec ses proches.
Ma mamie, je lui envoie des lettres et l'écrire en créole, c'est plus facile pour elle maintenant de comprendre ce que je lui dis qu'en français.
Donc maintenant, tu peux lui écrire en créole?
Oui, exactement, sans lui faire de fautes.
Des élèves motivés, mais peu nombreux. Pour l'enseignante, certains chefs d'établissement mettent le créole de côté.
Un moment assez attendu, c'est le moment du panel informant. Sans plus trop tarder, on va accueillir Rokhaya Diallo sur scène.
Je pense que le créole pourrait être enseigné dans les écoles françaises, mais maintenant plutôt comme une option, parce que ça ne concerne pas tout le monde, ça concerne une petite partie de la population. Mais c'est vrai que ce serait intéressant que ce soit accessible, pour les jeunes générations qui arrivent et qui ont des origines antillaises, de parler créole.
So, how were you able to get a class established in one school? How were you able to start a class in one school?
It's a long battle. First of all, I followed the experience of somebody very important for me, 2 people very important for me in Guadeloupe, Hector Poulet and Sylviane Telchid, because they did the same in Guadeloupe at the end of the 1970s, and which came official in 1980s, and I wanted to follow their experience. So I went to meet school manager and asked him if I could start a sort of recreation, a sort of activity, not really a class, an activity, a Creole activity in his school, and that was in Créole. And he said, why not? He said, why not? Because it was from a region in France where they speak another language. I think he was from Brittany. So he understood my question, my demand, and he said, okay. That was in 2004. Quite a lot of pupils came to meet me and wanted to intend this activity, but they asked me very, very rapidly to get it for exam, to pass exam, Creole exam. And I said, I don't think it's possible. It was possible in Guadeloupe, Martinique, Guyana, in the other region, our region, but not in France. And then we started to say, why is it not possible? If it's possible in Guadeloupe, Martinique, Guyana, Réunion, it should be possible here in France too. And so we met somebody very important in this demand. She's called Soria Adel. It's an actress, and she had a boy. She's got a boy who wanted to follow, to intend Creole at school. And I say, if you want to do this, we'll be with you. How do you say the word for? We support. We can support you, because they don't hear us. But if you, a parent of a pupil, you want and you ask for that, they will answer you. That's it's necessary. The answer will be necessary. We started to send letters to our ministry. First of all, they said no, it's not possible. Creole can be taught only on territory where there are people who speak this language. So we had to prove that in France there are a huge number of people who speak Creole, Guadeloupe, Martinique, Haitian, etc. And it took 2 years, 3 years, 2 years to get a positive answer. And in 2008, we started 2 classes, one in Créole and the second one here. So from this date to today, only these 2 schools receive pupils to allow them to choose Creole and to prepare the exam.
I should have asked this question from the very beginning. How important is Mr. Mango to you? How important that he's teaching you Creole? How important is he to you?
Apprendre de nouveaux mots.
C'est rare d'avoir un prof de créole.
And why? How important is he and why?
Ah, ben, quand je dis à mes amis à l'église, église haïtien chrétien, en fait, genre, quand je dis, j'ai pris créole en LV2, ils me disent que, ah, mais à mon époque, on n'avait pas créole, on faisait pas créole et tout. Je dis, en fait, genre, je crois qu'ils ne font que dans 2 lycées en France. Ouais. J'ai dit, mais en fait, genre, il fait que dans 2 lycées et genre, ça les choque et tout que je fasse créole au lycée. Parce qu'ils se disent, ah, tu fais créole et tout, genre, alors qu'en plus, en LV2 et à la place d'une autre langue et tout, genre, ils sont choqués. Parce que c'est pas fréquent.
C'est pas commun. Oui.
Et ça représente quoi pour toi?
Déjà, j'ai des bonnes notes, c'est ma langue.
C'est une chance d'avoir créole.
Et c'est Daphné qui m'a forcé à venir. J'allais pas venir.
Oui, tu disais.
C'est une chance d'avoir créole.
Ouais.
Parce que. Certes, on apprend le créole à la maison, mais à l'école, on approfondit plus le créole, genre le vocabulaire, l'histoire.
They can hear Creole at home, but here they can go further on history.
Aller plus loin.
Voilà.
Par exemple, les nègres marrons, je sais même pas si ça s'appelle comme ça.
Sorry, this thing, I'll stop, I promise, I'll stop in a minute because I don't want to keep you too long. But what would you say to British children or young people? I don't want to call you children, you're young people. You're similar age, because a lot of people in the United Kingdom, the same like 1 or 2 generations removed from the Caribbean, do not speak Creole at all, like zero. All they know is, I'm not even going to say what they know because it's all swear words, okay? So they don't really speak it. What would you say to them that they don't speak it? What would you say to them?
Qu'est-ce que vous diriez aux jeunes Anglais comme vous, à qui on leur dit, vous ne devez pas parler créole?
Faut pas écouter. Créole, franchement, c'est une belle langue et tout. Moi, quand je vais en Haïti, je n'arrive plus à parler français. C'est que le créole qui sort. No, when I go in Haiti, I can stop. I can stop speak Creole. I can talk. I can talk French. I talk only Creole because French ne sort pas.
Mais qu'est-ce que tu dirais aux Anglais?
Ils devraient
apprendre. C'est trop bien le créole.
C'est leur culture.
En plus, ça fait une langue en plus, genre quand tu voyages et tout.
C'est considéré comme...
Parce qu'il y a beaucoup d'Haïtiens déjà, il y a beaucoup d'Haïtiens partout. T'arrives, si tu connais pas l'anglais et que tu rencontres quelqu'un qui sait parler créole, ça t'aide beaucoup. En plus, même si tu connais juste du vocabulaire, ça peut aider.
En plus, il y a une culture dans le créole.
Ouais, en plus, s'ils écoutent d'autres musiques et qu'ils parlent pas créole...
Si j'ai pas fait créole, j'aurais pas pu parler à... Parce qu'il y a ma grande tante qui est décédée là récemment. Enfin, récemment, c'est l'année dernière, je crois. Vers l'été. Et elle parle pas du tout français, c'est que du créole, mais de l'ancien créole. Et j'arrivais à lui parler en fait avec les mots que certainement je vous ai appris genre Bocanta, les trucs comme ça, elle connaissait ça. Ouais. Et je lui ai parlé un peu comme ça, et franchement, ça m'a fait pleurer et tout. Ouais. J'étais vraiment en mode...
Wow, that actually hurt me. That hit me. Wow. Wow, that's... Thank you for that. No, thank you. Thank you. Now, isn't it brilliant that children can be taught in academia Creole in a country like France, metropolitan France? But in 2021, a documentary was actually made about Tony Mango. Don't worry, nothing happened. He didn't do anything wrong. The problem is that he was the last Creole teacher in metropolitan France, and he decided to move back to Guadeloupe. And as of current, in this year of 2024, according to my research, which may be wrong, there is no teacher in metropolitan France, in academia itself, teaching Creole, which I think is a big loss. And it could have been a snowball effect for many other things. Not only that, I recently read an article about a child, about 17, who is applying to take the Creole exam, because you can still take the exam, but unfortunately his school rejected that opportunity. Had he had someone like Tony Mango, I'm sure he would have been encouraged and supported to take that exam.
A huge part of learning a language is intermixing the language that you are confident in English and a language that you're learning. We've created 7 prompts for you to self-analyze, understand yourself and your identity. Been edited by Dr. Morgan Dalfinas, who is an amazing historian, who is St. Lucian, who has done fantastic work on language, on history, on heritage. It's translated both in English and in Creole for you to understand and for you to start learning Creole on a more personal level. We also have a vocab bank in there for you to learn to have a visual aid when it comes to learning the language and to learn how to spell correctly in the language. We have some word searches. We like to make things fun.
What do we do?
What do we not do?
Right?
That's the question.
And it's like, what at this point, what do these two saints not do? So we started off just teaching Creole online virtually via Zoom. To, I guess, diaspora babies, people who had like moved away, their parents had moved away, didn't teach them the language, and wanted that part of reconnecting to home. And so we developed a course and we started teaching Creole online.
Yes, that's one part of what we do. And another huge part of what we do is to do with like arts and culture and creating infrastructure and support for artists, and also, for artists, essentially. What would someone gain from coming to our Creole classes? A lot, let me tell you. You don't only learn Creole, you learn so much more. But so before we begin the process, we have a consultation with everybody who wants to possibly learn with us. And, in that time, we get to know you, figure out, your learning style, be able to work with you so that, your learning journey is a bit more personal and it's not just this random experience that you have that is totally alienating and whatever. So we have a consultation, and then all of our students, once they do decide to become students, we use a learning management system. So we have a website that every single student has their own login details for, and you log in and you're able to find your class. So how we do it is that we have a presentation as well as a worksheet, and it's all online. So that's how we're able to be international and teach around the world. And so when a student logs in, we start a Zoom call or Teams call, whatever it may be. And we teach that way. So we use the presentation as well as the PowerPoint, and all of our worksheets are interactive so that students can fill it in instantly on the worksheet, or if you prefer, you can print it out. Depending, again, on your learning style, we try to cater for various learning styles. And yes, we go by units. So every unit we look at something different, and you learn specific language and grammar to do with that unit, and then it develops your language skills along the way, and you just build on what you've learned unit by unit.
Bonjour, welcome to the Haitian Creole Language Institute of New York website. My name is Winnie Lamore Kwanzaa, and I'm the founder and managing director of HCLI. We're so excited to have you here, and we're so glad to get you started on your Creole language learning journey. As you look around, you'll find lots of really great information about the work that we do and the courses and programming that we offer. Make sure you check out our signature programs like the Creole Language Partner Program and our sister program, Jardin Timoun, which offers Creole for kids. And make sure you check out our merchandise. We have a little something for everybody. If you have any questions or you just want to chat, you can give us a call, send us an email, or hit us up on social media. We look forward to teaching you Haitian Creole. Merci en pile, moi appréciez nous en pile. M'a offri nous tout honneur et respect et puis n'a parlé bientôt. Au revoir.
So the families that we have, the pool of families that we've had have usually been those who are of Haitian heritage. And we've also had families that are of mixed heritage. And so, for example, where one parent is Japanese, one parent is Haitian or Haitian American, we've had a parent who's Russian, a parent who's Haitian American, or where both parents are Haitian American or both parents are Haitian. And so families that we've mostly attracted and who have come to join us are usually parents and families who are also Haitian advocates, Haitian Creole advocates, excuse me, and who understand the importance of this work and the importance of, I'll use the word language activism, which we often use, Winnie and I, in describing part of our work, because in essence, there is an advocacy that still has to happen, because we have people, even those who are Haitian, who still subscribe to talking about the language through the lens of myths and through the lens of stigma. And they stigmatize the language and how it's used and its purpose. And so a lot of our work centers around an amount of activism. And so the parents and the families that join us are usually those who understand the work. And we have a variety of people, but most of them are usually those that have Haitian heritage.
We would have a really large mix of people taking the same kind of classes. And I learned early on that it's a different experience for someone who's never had any exposure to Creole to learn Creole than someone who may be a heritage speaker or a heritage learner of Creole. So very early on, we started offering very separate courses for folks who are interested in learning Creole. So at this time, we have a class called Haitian Creole for Heritage Learners. And that class is for folks who are of Haitian heritage, who are already very familiar with Creole in whatever way. They might have high auditory comprehension. They might be really familiar with Haitian culture. They might already know some aspects of Haitian history. They already have some connection to Haiti. And so in that class, it's primarily Haitian people or people of Haitian heritage. But in general, overall, I would say that we have mostly Haitian people in our classes, which is really great because then I get to do work with my people. I work for my people with my people, which is really, really great for my spirit. In terms of challenges and success stories at the Institute, I'd say one of the biggest challenges has been figuring out how to teach a language that's been historically an oral language, and two, that has been historically undervalued so that there isn't as much written content as you would expect from a language that has such a long history. We create a lot of our own content. So a large majority of our curriculum at both spaces is original content. And so that's been challenging because that means not only do we have to be language advocates, as Darnell said, And not only do we have to be educators, but we also have to tap into the creative process as writers and songwriters and visual artists, because we're creating content for our students and our communities that they can use to be actively learning Creole. So I would say that's been one of the challenges. And I'm actually going to pause there because I feel like if we're talking about success stories, we could just be here for hours because we're really teaching people Creole. And not only are people learning Creole, but they're actually coming away with a stronger sense of self and a lot more confidence in who they are, especially in relation to their connection to Haiti, which is something that people are using language for. They're really using Creole as a way to reconnect with Haiti. So I would say some of our largest success stories have been centered around that in particular.
Very briefly, 1973, I took up a full-time job, lecturer's job with Bethnal Green Adult Education Institute, and I was leading the development of the adult literacy work. And that was specifically targeted to Indigenous first English speakers as adults who could not read and write. And that was the main focus. What we found was that, yes, indeed, we had to do a lot of outreach, but we did begin to get a lot of, EastEnders, white EastEnders, to use that term, Indigenous first language speakers who had failed to learn to read and write in our schools. But we were also inundated with Caribbean people, Somali people, and so on. Now with the Somali people, we had to, unless they had a really good fluency in spoken English, we had to refer them to what are now called ESOL, English for Speakers of Other Language classes. But the Caribbean people came in as first language speakers. But at lunchtime, they used to speak another language. And I used to ask about this, and they would say, oh, it's just it's nothing, it's a nothing language, it's just what we speak among ourselves. And I didn't take too much notice to begin with, except that I did know about the influence of first language and learning to read and write in your first language before you start reading and writing in a second language. And then we got a young fellow from somewhere in the middle of the Indian Ocean, an island not the Seychelles, another one. And he was sitting down with these Caribbean people, and they were all chatting in this language, which wasn't a language. And I said to him, excuse me, do you speak the same language as these people? And I said, how come? I said, you come from the middle of the Indian Ocean and you come from the middle of the Caribbean Ocean. Oh, all over the world, they said, all over the world. Toot moon, pale, Kwéyòl. And I realised that we had really got to take this seriously. Right, it won in our teaching methodology and content for developing their English language, reading and writing skills. But secondly, finding out whether there was a way to write their language. And they all said, oh, no, it's not a language, not a language. It's just what we speak among ourselves, da-da. And so there was this mindset, right? So being, I wasn't trained in linguistics at all, but I, knew quite a lot of it, and I was, an adult literacy tutor, so I knew what I was doing. So what I started doing was getting them to speak to me in Kwéyòl, and I'd just write it down using English spelling, right? And then I'd read it back to them. And they say, what? Right? How was it that this English woman could read this back to them? And I said, because it's written down. Every language can be written down. Your language should be written down. And let's write it down. I said, we'll have to use an English spelling. I thought, but let's give it a go. And that did interest people. it was good to discover that there was a written form, and there was a written form that, though not politically approved, but was approved by this significant cultural organisation in St. Lucia, their own dictionary and things. So I brought that back and thought, well, you know, and talked to people and talked to the students and things like this, and said, you know, if look look at this. This is patois. This is your dictionary, and they, you know, you could see that there was a beginning to believe that this was something, not just this thing they'd been told, you know, was nothing. And so I said, what if we do some classes in reading and writing patois, because we can't introduce that into our English, you know, work. So we did. So started the patois project. And I said, bring your kids, you know, and things like this. So it was quite family oriented and things like this. And the youngsters wanted to learn it. They weren't particularly interested in reading or writing it, but they wanted to speak it, because when they went home, they couldn't talk to their cousins, or in fact their half sisters and half brothers, because they all spoke patois. So that's how it sort of started. I mean, it was a bit weird. There was this white woman teaching them, but we did everything, and this is why I'm so sorry I can't find some of the early work we did, because we you know, sort of developed things resulting in, for instance, this book of stories they told, and it's in patois and English and things like this. But I got a phone call one day from an adult education community development worker in Hackney, whose name was Rachel. And she said, you know, is it true that you teach patois? And I said, well, I'm involved in a program that's developing people to be able to read and write patois. What are you doing that? What's your business is it yours? So I said, well, hang on a moment, I'm an adult literacy teacher, and it's part of the wide web of you know, approaching literacy teaching, and I mean every language has a literacy and things like this. So anyway, down came, I said, come and meet the group, come and talk to the students. So down came Rachel, and she cooled down a bit. And Rachel is Hubisi Nwemeli, Dr. Hubisi Nwemeli. And she was still very, she was mightily, her nose was definitely, you know. And so I said, well, look, here you are. This is what we're doing. You're a fluent patois speaker, you're an educated woman. Come and work with me, and you take it over. So basically, that's the long and the short of it. So the fundamental principle was good, you know, academic standards, you know, proper teaching, right? But having as much fun and developing people's love and affirming themselves in their language.
According to my research, during this time, Hubisi and Kwéyòl's group was actually flourishing in terms of they were able to start creating their own resources such as workbooks. They created their own poetry books. The books that they were creating, they were actually using typewriters, but at the time the typewriters didn't have the accents, so they would write them in themselves. In addition to that, they also were able to forge a relationship with other countries, primarily St. Lucia, to create pen pals to show the progress that they had actually made in their work, and by showing that they were able to write in Creole as a result of going to the lessons. The students went on to create their own play called Papa Montez. One act of this play was performed at the Tower Hamlets Institute of Adult Education Open Curtain Festival in July 1985. This was the first time that a Creole play had been performed in Britain, and it was very popular with the audience at the festival. In 1986, the group performed a second play called Voler and La Place La, which was directed by Hubisi Nwemeli and performed by the members of the now 3 Creole classes. They also performed this play as their contribution to Caribbean Focus, which was a year of Caribbean-related events which took place all over the United Kingdom, which was organised by the Commonwealth Institute.
The guy who was the director of the theatre said, you know, he was so, he was really impressed by them all, you know. And I mean, it was wonderful. I may have the script in my archive boxes in store. I mean, really in store, you know. But it was really good. And I mean, people came out of that, both the audience, but particularly, you know, obviously the students and so on just came out of that just buzzing. Nobody could tell them that it wasn't a language. Seeing the change in people's attitude to their language and owning it and realising it is a language and being able to write it and being able to read it. Even if not all that well, but you know, that's not the point. They could take it on for themselves from there. But the main thing was just, you know, getting out of this bloody colonialist, neo-colonialist, ex-colonialist stuff, that this is their language. It's their people, historically, who created this language. And you can read and write it.
And while I was back in Martinique as a student at uni, I needed a job, and there was an opportunity for English students to translate, to be translators in courts. And one day I was asked if I could translate in Creole and for St. Lucian defendants, and I did it. And I was very popular because I am a bit extravagant, and I like to make hand gesture, and I'm not shy really. The lawyers really liked the fact that I could match their energy in defending their clients. So I was very on request. I was doing it quite often, and yeah. So that's why I did it for three years straight, in the court or with the police, on listening on drug trafficking and all kind of stuff. I was very much involved in it for 3 years in Martinique.
So do you think it should be used in schools and in court in terms of so they get the right message?
Well, I think it should be used everywhere. Now, having said that, I'm going to say it is used everywhere, but it is not its use simply that is the important thing. I'll tell you why. Judge Susie Doveille is a judge, a St. Lucian judge, a very proficient English Creole speaker. But because the court does not recognize the Creole language, right? Somebody came before her in her court, and you have the translator, and she's asked a question, and the translator has translated the response to her, and she realizes that that what the translator said to her is not exactly what the guy actually meant and stuff, you know. Now, how do you deal with that situation? Do you operate on the basis of your personal knowledge, or do you operate on the basis of what the translator has said to you? You know, she mentioned that in one time, you know, and said she really wasn't a binder as to how to proceed, because she knew that what the translator was saying was not the correct thing, you know. Now, to get a little further, if you have somebody on the stand, say for example on a murder charge, it means you're fighting for your life, right? But you can't explain to the judge what happened because you don't speak English. You're going to depend on a translator to do so. Now, in a situation where you have a judge like Susie, she would understand you. But a non-Creole speaking judge, and there are lots of them because the judges come from all over the Caribbean, then a non-speaking judge would go on the basis of what the translator has presented to him, which might be inaccurate. But you are fighting for your life. You know, how do you deal with the situations? You know, in school, I think every teacher uses Creole in school. It is just that it is not an official language of instruction, but inevitably you would have to use it both as a language of instruction and as a language of clarification. And sometimes to be able to get through to certain students, you need to reach out to them in the language that they are more competent in. And so that happens. Yeah.
It is very important because sometimes, the defendant doesn't understand what's going on. I can get, for instance, there was a gentleman from St. Lucia. St. Lucia, they speak English, but in his case, his English wasn't fluent, so he felt more comfortable in Creole, and being more comfortable in Creole, he could give more details, explains, like circumstances, because the facts are the facts. Sometimes the facts are there are reports and things like that, but in terms of circumstances, things that could affect the jury, Creole is the language that translates your emotions needs to come across, because if they can't get you from your guts, I think that it's you come with a handicap, because if they can't understand what you really, really want to say, and if the English is a barrier, you're starting with a very, very, it's difficult. So it was very important to be there, and I always asked, do you want me to translate in English or Creole? And that was the defendant's choice most of the time. So I think that it's important to be able to express yourself with the language that comes with your emotion if you want to really get yourself out of a very dire situation.